Hello and welcome to the Schola Progenium. Today I'm going to be doing a very straightforward video for you. I'm going to be going through all of the Warlord traits in the Blood Angels 9th edition codex supplement and rating them out of 5 and giving you my opinion on, why I think they're good, why I might not be bothered by certain ones, and maybe you guys can leave me some comments below if there's something I'm not too interested in and point out, maybe I'm missing something here. But without much further ado, let's get stuck straight in. So, number 1, we have Speed of the Primarch. Such is this Warlord's speed, it is as if the Primarch himself fights alongside his sons. Now, it sounds epic, and at the start of the fight phase, if this Warlord is within engagement range of any enemy unit, it can fight first that phase. Now, for me, I am just not bothered by this one at all. I've never been bothered by it in any of its forms in previous editions. It's just one that's not interesting for me. And it's why I never make Mephiston my Warlord, because he has to take this one. And it's just, maybe I'm missing something here. But for me, it seems like this is never, ever going to be useful to me. I am a Blood Angel here, right? So I have absolutely destructive characters. Most of the time I'm going to be getting into combat with my characters on purpose. I'm going to be charging and attacking first anyway, so I can pick that guy if I want him to. I can pick my Warlord if I want to, so to speak, to fight first. It takes a brave opponent to charge one of your characters. There's not much out there that can take on Blood Angel's character that's been selected as the Warlord in most cases. Maybe if you're selecting one of your backup characters as a Warlord, then this might be useful because it gives him that chance if someone tries to take him out. If you've got someone who you're relying on for rites of battle or for things like that, then maybe it's useful. But for me, this one, it's just, most of the time my guy is either going to be powerful enough and tough enough to survive anyone who comes at him, or he's going to be laying out the damage first. And on the flip side, if someone does come at him that is that powerful, then yeah, this might be useful. But I feel like that's just because we are top tier with our combat characters. I feel like it's just not going to be that often that this clutch moment comes to pass. So for me, this one is, it's a 1 out of 5. I just think it's an awful Warlord trait. Maybe you guys can justify it to me, but for me, I never take Speed of the Primarch. I think it's rubbish. So number 2, Artisan of War. Now this one's a new one, and this Warlord is a true artist both on and off the battlefield. His talents are reflected in the exquisite workmanship of his war gear, for he insists upon personally crafting his weapons of war. Now, first of all, from a fluff and a lore perspective, if that's the kind of player that you are, or just in general, if you like your headcanon as I do for my armies, then this one is perfect, because as Blood Angels, every Blood Angel is an Artisan of War. We're all about finely crafted gear. If you look at the plastic kit for the tactical marines for Blood Angels, which not many people are going to bother with these days because of Primarch and stuff like that, but when you look at that, the extra bits and pieces, the fine metal work that they've got hanging off their armor, plating and that kind of thing is, exquisite. This is what Blood Angels are all about. We are fine craftsmen. We appreciate beauty both on the battlefield and in the art of war. All art, is one to us. So for this one, it's a great choice, and it also is super powerful. I really like this one. This Warlord can be given one of the following special issue wargear relics from page 53, and I'll go through them in a second. Now they are Adamantine Mantle, Artificer Armour, Mastercrafted Weapon, or a Digital Weapon. This is in addition to any other relics they may have, and each relic in your army must be unique. So you can't double up on the same relic, but you can do a lot of doubling up in terms of cool relic combos. You can take 2 relics that work really nicely together. Now I'll go through the 4 pieces of special issue wargear in more detail now. So an Adamantine Mantle. These flowing cloaks are laced through with threads of braided adamantine, When combined with armour and energy fields, it has been shown time and again that these symbols of office are proof against even the very strongest attacks. Now, each time the bearer would lose a wound, roll 1d6 on a 5+, that wound is not lost. So it's a 5-up, feel no pain. Now that's, really good, and the thing I really like about it is that it allows us to sort of use some classic combos. We've lost a lot of stuff, a lot of stratagems and relics and that kind of thing in the changeover to the supplement, but that 5-up feel no pain was a sort of classic ability of a Blood Angels captain that made him really resilient. Now it's not making him invincible or invulnerable. It's not the most amazing failsafe in the world, but considering Games Workshop have been hammering feel no pains hard, they've been they've taken them away from the Drukhari, they've taken them or adjusted them for Death Guard and all of that. Being able to hold on to that 5-up feel no pain for our captain is really nice and relatively effective, and for me that's a 3 out of 5. It's just solid, straight down the middle. You can't go wrong with that choice. Now, Artificer Armour is the next option. Crafted by the finest artificers of the chapter, these ornately detailed suits of armour provide superior protective capabilities that rival even Terminator plate. All who set eyes upon the wearers know that honoured champions of the Imperium stand before them. And the bearer has a save characteristic of 2-up and a 5-up invulnerable save, which is really nice because it basically means you can make a jetpack Terminator, for want of a better metaphor. You can give your character all the benefits of having the Terminator armor. Now, the 5-up invuln is a bit of a waste on certain characters because they'll have, of course, a 4-up invulnerable save if they have a Rosarius. But, the 2-up armor save is really useful, and it plugs a huge gap in our, killer captains' abilities, because we've all been there. You charge your captain forward, he smashes through his target, wrecks it, everything gets wrecked, but then you're stood in the open right in front of and unable to consolidate into safety in front of plenty of enemy Daka, and it doesn't even need to be the most powerful shots, just massed firepower, because you've only got power armor save, or if they take you down to your storm shield save, it's will get the job done. You will die from just enough dice being thrown at you, but this massively increases your chances of surviving. It's a huge benefit. It really helps resolve that issue. So for me, Artificer Armor is a solid 4 out of 5. It's a really good choice. Now the next option is the Master Crafted Weapon. Though virtually every weapon wielded by the Blood Angels is a fine piece of art, as pleasing to the eye as it is effective at slaying the Emperor's foes, within this noble brotherhood there are warriors whose skills at the forge are incredible indeed. Their creations are so beautiful they can induce tears, yet they remain ruthlessly effective. When you give a model this relic, select one weapon that model is equipped with, and this cannot be a relic or a weapon whose profile includes the word Master Crafted, and add 1 to the damage characteristic of that weapon. That weapon is considered to be a chapter relic. Now, that is super cool because, first things first, let's look at that fluff. It induces tears in those who see it, on many occasions. Imagine a grizzled Catachan veteran, he's seen battle brothers who he's been close to since he was a mere cadet, torn apart in the most vicious fashion in his time on the battlefield, and yet he's never shed a tear. With grim resolve, he's always kept his eye on the mission, but when laying eyes upon this beautiful piece of craftsmanship, it can't help but invoke an emotional response and bring this someone to tears. And people live hard lives in the 40k universe, so the fact that this sword or weapon looks that good, I think that's something in itself. Now, when you give a model this relic, you're giving it an additional damage every time it gets an attack successfully through, and that's really useful. Flat damage is great. Increasing your flat damage even better. It combines great with weapons that have a D3 characteristic, or it combines great with weapons that already have flat damage. You can't go wrong with a mastercrafted weapon. It's really great. Now, obviously, one of the things you might want to consider is that it almost makes things too great, if that can be the case. I'll often say there's no kill like overkill, but if you have a character that is already decked out to the nines and ready to rock and roll, and he's going to wreck everything he sees on the battlefield, that you can see and what's ahead of you, so to speak, then giving him an extra 1 damage every time he gets an attack through can be a waste of time. If you face a lot of hordes in your meta or that kind of thing, this can be a waste of time. So it just depends what you're going to be doing with this guy. If you're going for those big juicy targets, stacking extra damage through every time you slip one through, really good, especially against units that don't have an invuln save. You could be stacking 4, even 5 damage additionally onto like a tank or something like that doesn't have an invuln save, just because you're going to get so many attacks through its armor, and it's just going to stack up massively. So really it can be, in the right hands and used properly, absolutely ridiculous. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Okay, just it can't be a 5 out of 5 simply because it's a lot of the time not going to be needed. Now, digital weapons are the final one. Now, digital weapons are concealed lasers fitted into finger rings, bionic implants, or the knuckles of a power-armoured gauntlet. In the case of the Blood Angels, they're known to be in themselves items of great beauty, fashioned with immense care. Short-ranged and powerful, they are typically triggered in the midst of a melee in order to blast the enemy from an unexpected angle. Now, each time the bearer fights, it can make 1 additional attack using the close combat weapon profile. If that attack scores a hit, the target suffers 1 mortal wound and the attack sequence ends. So super cool. Use this last and you can just get an extra hit on someone, and with our characters, they're up on weapon skill 2, you're almost definitely going to hit, and then bang, you're going to get that mortal wound. Now, it's not as effective as a master crafted weapon because you only get the chance for 1, but in some circumstances, when you're fighting against someone with some ridiculous invuln save or something like that, this can be really nice because mortal wounds are always welcome, especially in 9th edition, especially when you're trying to shift ridiculously tough units off objectives. Just being able to get that extra wound on, that can make the difference. So it is really nice to have. It's not like broken powerful, but it's good, it's tasty. So for that, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Now, all in all, the Artisan of War is a great trait. Although none of the individual abilities are 4 out of 5, I would say definitely I rate this as a 5 out of 5 on the Warlord traits, just simply because that flexibility allows you to do so much with your characters. You can build that into the way your list is playing, and it's definitely one to have your eye on. You want to be looking at that and considering those special issue war gear pieces as an additional Warlord trait. You want to be considering doubling up on your relic, so to speak, because it's so powerful. So 5 out of 5 as an option. Depending on what you take, your mileage may vary. Now 3 is Soul Warden. Now this is an aura, and this Warlord is possessed of an iron will. His sheer mental determination ensuring that neither his own red thirst nor the evils of enemy sorcerers can easily find purchase upon his or his brother's souls. While a friendly Blood Angels unit is within 6 inches of this Warlord, each time a model in that unit would lose a wound as the result of a mortal wound, roll 1d6. On a 5 up, that wound is not lost. Now this is, it's cool, and, Games Workshop are clearly trying to season 9th with all these different mortal wounds. There's plenty of ways to give out mortal wounds, there's plenty of ways to protect from mortal wounds. And for me, I'm just not convinced by the whole mortal wound cycle. It's nice to have, when you get smited, it's very frustrating. Everyone knows that. It's really annoying when people just smash wounds on you. And I love smashing out mortal wounds from Grav Talent and Dark Reaver Dark Elder jet bikes. But it's, for me, it's the least of our worries, if that makes sense. We've got plenty of other stuff going on. It's useful because it affects other units, so it can protect those Sanguinary Guard, it can protect those Death Company. People will, on occasion, try and hammer them with mortal wounds. A Psyker getting off a blast of mortal wounds, and then another smite going off, or, a variety of other ways, that can really take a toll on our very expensive elite stuff. So, it is really useful in some circumstances. But again, it's still not that amazing. It still only is essentially a 5 at Feel No Pain. So, although it is an aura, although it can potentially save us in a clutch moment, for me, Soul Warden truth be told, is a 2 out of 5. It, it doesn't help that much, and it doesn't come into play that often. It can, on occasion, be a game changer, so it's not 1 out of 5, but for me, I'm not excited by Soul Warden. 2 out of 5. Maybe you can change my mind, convince me otherwise, if you believe differently in the comment section below. Okay, so we're now on to Heroic Bearing, number 4. This Warlord is a beacon of hope in a hateful galaxy. No matter the odds, friendly forces are inspired by his presence. Now, he's got 2 abilities here, and that's very nice, of course. The first is add 3 inches to the range of this Warlord's rights of battle, tactical precision, chapter master, and spiritual abilities to a maximum of 9. Now, that is great. That is really, really good in itself. When you've, I'm sure, faced opponents such as Call and his current standing and that kind of thing, when your opponent has such a wide area to buff, it means they can push the envelope that little bit further. They can, not just in a sort of inches and board control way, but they can be riskier or pull off things that would be otherwise considered risky with very little risk. They can send that unit out on its own because they know it can rely on those buffs if it needs them. And, it's just, it allows way more opportunity on the battlefield, and in the hands of a good player, it's really useful. That extra 3 inches can, with very clever unit placement, can just make a huge difference. Now, so that's really, really good. It can't be understated. That is really good, really, really good. It's your mileage may vary on it, and obviously the way that auras and buffs have, that they have been, debuffed, so to speak. So it's not as powerful as it would have been historically, but it's still very, very useful in the right hands. Now, the second part is this Warlord has the following ability: Heroic Bearing, Aura. While a friendly Blood Angel's core unit is within 9 inches of this Warlord, add 1 to the leadership characteristic of models in that unit. Now, this is, it's situational, but unlike Speed of the Primarch or Soul Warden, it's a situation that probably will come up every battle. And, if you, by having an extra leadership, happen to save even a modest tactical marine, that is 18 points. That's actually, really good. And, you might do that more than once in a battle, and on one of those occasions it could be a significant moment where you need to pass that leadership test. You need to keep a couple of people just to make sure you've got more models than an opponent on an objective. You're both objectives secured, and this is the thing that just means you get those extra 50, those extra points or whatever. So it can on occasion make a big difference, but I think it's one of those where it'll almost always come in, but it'll very rarely be significant or useful in any way. And a lot of these, other Warlord traits allow you to actually just hit the opponent so hard, or do something so significant and so game-changing that, they're really significant, whereas this one is like mediocre at best. And that's why I think these 2 buffs are combined together, because, all in all, it makes, in the right hands, and if you're trying to use a character that's very much a support character, then this can make that support character really, really useful and, bring value. And it justifies having a support character in a Blood Angel's army, is what I think I'm trying to say here, because a lot of the time, often you're just gunning forward, all gas, no brakes, just trying to wreck face. So, this does justify not doing that with one of your characters. So for me, Heroic Bearing is a 3 out of 5 or a 4 out of 5 on a good day. It's definitely one to watch. It's one to consider. It depends what list you're building. It's one you take based on your list. Now, number 5, Gift of Foresight. Now, this heroic warrior bears a glimmering of Sanguinius's prophetic gifts. Flashes of foresight allow him to parry and weave around his enemies' blows with supernatural speed and skill. And I love the idea of this, just the idea of him being a proper duelist. I always like the idea of, the Space Marines when they're doing their training in the fighting cages, and, they're sort of dueling and bravado against each other with the Blood Angels. They are masters of combat, And for him to be like a sort of master fencer, master swordsman, or that kind of thing, super cool and very fitting, especially for a Blood Angel of all Astartes. Now, in each turn, you can re-roll 1 hit roll, 1 wound roll, and 1 saving throw made for this Warlord. Now, that, for me and the way I play my characters, absolutely incredible. And the fact that it's every turn means that, if you're in combat, if you're going up against some big stuff that you can't necessarily smash through in 1 turn, and it's going to be coming back on you, getting to re-roll 1 of your saving throws can be absolutely critical, especially you've got your invuln save, so that could save you from, if it's a big thing, it could save you from 3 damage just straight up from that re-roll. We've all been there where, essentially we've had 3 dice, and if we pass 2 of them, we'll be fine, but if we fail 2 of them, we can't even save them. There's no point even re-rolling 1 of them. But this is great because, if you can re-roll 1 of those and then use command point to re-roll a separate one, absolutely brilliant. You can really save a character with this. And also the fact that, you'll be hitting again, and often you'll be hitting again first if you've charged in, and then obviously you get to pick first in the next round. Then you'll get to re-roll a hit roll, re-roll a wound roll. It's just absolutely invaluable when your characters are out there smashing stuff up. I know Smash Captains aren't as effective as they used to be, but we still need to rely on our combat characters doing some serious heavy lifting. And for me, Gift of Foresight, absolutely fantastic, brilliant. You're just going to get so much juice out of this, and there's going to be so many moments where you're glad you had that re-roll. And, it saves you command points in a very command point heavy army. Getting rerolls for free instead of spending command points on them, and getting more than 1 in a phase, you're getting a reroll, a hit and a wound, in the same phase. That is just absolutely brilliant. It stops your characters from fluffing it, and often when you're putting your character in a position where they're in the situation where they could die, and then they do fluff it, then that means they're going to die, and that can be game changing. It can lose you the game. But in this situation, time and time again, you are not going to be put in that position where you're on the back foot and it's an uphill climb for the rest of the battle. This guy's going to do the job you put him in position to do, and he's not going to die doing it. So brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So for me, it's a 5 out of 5. I love Gift of Foresight. It's definitely up there with the sort of Warlord traits that I'm always taking. Maybe, again, I'm overselling it. So, if you've got other ideas, please do not hesitate to let me know, and let everyone else know in the comments section down below. Now, 6 is, and the final one is Selfless Valour. This Warlord is courageous and noble. He leaps into battle without a moment's thought for his own safety. This Warlord is eligible to perform a heroic intervention if it is within 6 inches horizontally of an enemy unit, and when performing a heroic intervention with this Warlord, you can move them up to 6 inches instead of 3 inches. All of the rules for heroic intervention still apply. So, really useful because you can get your Warlord 6 inches forward. If you're fighting against another combat army and they've got the audacity to try and charge the Blood Angels' lines and bring the melee combat to us, the fools, but if they do feel that they can go toe-to-toe with us in combat, then having the ability to get forward and, they're obviously, if they're a melee player, they're not going to be blind to opportunities for heroic intervention. Often when you're playing a non-melee player, so to speak, non-melee opponent, if they're not that sharp or they're not that on their game, maybe it's later turns, then you can pull stuff off like cheeky maneuvers with heroic interventions, and we all love doing that as melee players. But against a melee opponent, this really gets on their nerves because 6 inches is actually a big amount to avoid, and if they're trying to get into some of your harder units and you've got your characters near those hard units because you're buffing them with your auras and that kind of thing, then if he wants to take the head of the snake off, so to speak, and he wants to target your best melee units with his best melee units, this is really difficult because he has to make the choice of getting your character involved in that, when as a clever player he'd much more rather probably take out your units without allowing the characters to help out, So this is just very annoying, very frustrating, and really gets in the way of your opponent's plans. And, when you're facing another melee opponent, it can be a real battle of wits, and it can be a real showdown, and, it can be a ruthless battle. So having this ability, and these aren't uncommon abilities either. There's in melee based codexes or melee sort of leaning forces in 40k, this is quite a common ability to have, and a lot of people do take it. So to sort of find yourself not with it can put you on the back foot. But having said all this, in a lot of, in half the games you play, it's just you're not going to be that bothered by this. You'll be on the attack all the time. You'll be charging in most of the time, and you won't really need to heroically intervene at any stage very often. So it's either going to be really cool, or mediocre and a bit just useless and a waste of time. So for me, that puts this straight down the middle on a 3 out of 5. Good, but nothing to write home about. So I'll do the Flesh Tearers separately if people want me to. If this, I can always do another video on that, but I'm going to leave the Flesh Tearers out for now. I want to try and keep the video shorter and more snappy. But hopefully you've enjoyed all of that. Hopefully that's been informative. Let me know if you like this kind of video and if there's any sort of suggestions you've got. But otherwise, as always, I hope you found this video interesting and entertaining. This has been the Schola Progenium. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.